Hello and welcome to the Savage Movie Night Podcast. Today is all about Urban Cowboy. I am your device invented to make training for a dangerous sport safer that got turned into a mechanical novelty for drunken yahoos, host Adam. Joining me, as always, is my influential article that gets turned into a hit film, only for the journalist to admit decades later he faked the whole thing, co-host Kristen. Hi, Kristen.
Hey, Adam. Happy to be here.
Well, especially on a rainy day for both of us. What are some of the top songs on your playlist currently?
See, that's an interesting question because I listen to like a handful of different playlists. So to think about that, I thought I would look at my like Spotify on repeat, like the things that come up frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when I look at it, I notice that I'm listening to a lot of Owl City because I'm seeing him in like 10 days. So that he's in there a lot. I'm listening to the Amity Affliction a lot. I've been listening to the latest Green Day album a little bit more, trying to catch up from last year, a bunch of the 2023 releases.
Yeah. That latest Green Day album is good. I really enjoyed it.
I gotta get through a couple more listens because I think it's like half and half for me. I like about half of the songs, but maybe the others will grow on me.
No, I can see that. For me, I am currently, I've made a playlist of every David Bowie album ever, and I'm working my way through that because I have not actually listened to every album he has done. So
that's a fun one.
Yeah, no, because David Bowie is awesome, and I'm like, already into the '80s, and I'm not even, like there are certain artists, like if you tried to listen to that much of them, like without taking a break, you'd be like, man, I'm kind of tired of hearing them. I'm ready for something else. But Bowie, you're just like, man, I still don't have enough Bowie yet. So
yeah, he's got the versatility.
Yep. So awesome. All right. Well. And last, but certainly not least, is the jarring sight of John Travolta doing actual dip in the opening credits of a movie, co-host Rob. Hi, Rob.
That's me. You nailed it on the head. How you doing, Adam?
Well, you are jarring just at times, just like John Travolta putting in an actual little bit of dip.
Oh, yeah.
So, Rob, what's the worst movie you think you've seen recently?
The most recent bad film that I saw was on one I just rented called It Comes at Night. It just, I don't know if you've seen that one at all. Anyone seen that one?
Yeah, I've seen that one. It's like, it's such an interesting movie because like for horror fans, I remember a lot of people were disappointed for it because it's basically like nothing happens. You get to the end of the film and like nothing really happened, right?
No, that was it. I really wanted, I was into it. It was just disappointing. It's one of those, you're right. Like it just had, the whole point of it was something's out there. We don't know what it is. A lot of distractions. And that's about it.
It's like they focus on the paranoia, but then they don't give you the promise of what's out there. It's really frustrating.
Well, that reminds me of a couple movies that seem like they were better. Like there's The Vast of Night, which just name-wise, it was kind of reminded me of. The Vast of Night is about, it's like 1950s town. It's got kind of like a Twilight Zone feel to the whole thing, and it's basically like alien occurrence, and these couple locals investigate it, what happens to them, the strange what seems like could be alien phenomena, happening over the course of one night while most of the town is at the local basketball game.
That sounds familiar. And there's no payoff?
No. I mean, like that was an actually good movie.
There is a payoff. See, the thing is like I think the movie has its audience. It Comes at Night, but it's just it doesn't work for Rob and me because I think I like to actually see the threat. I don't like the idea of the threat. Like that's not enough for me. I want some kind of payoff. But there are a lot of people that they just like some people like films that are just all about the tension and the vibes. But yeah, that one's definitely like tense and vibey, but it doesn't actually to go anywhere, which is the frustrating aspect.
Yeah. No, I'm curious. Now I might check it out to see how I react to it. But it's also reminding me a bit of a movie that again does have a payoff is 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yes. That's the perfect example. 10 Cloverfield Lane adds that tension and then actually delivers on what the thing is that they're hiding from. So that is actually the perfect example, because that one actually does it compared to this one where it kind of like ends right when you would actually start getting some information.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, like I said, I may just have to check that out at some point to see, how I feel about it. But, that's for the future. On today's episode, we are going to learn who was married to Leslie Stahl, if putting Lily Tomlin and John Travolta in a romantic drama would lead to box office success, and most importantly, is that gunfire? Who could possibly be shooting at us in 1979 East LA? It's so safe. Yes, it's Urban Cowboy. But first, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Jazzology with Willard Jenkins. Jazzology is a fun and challenging jazz trivia show where two contestants go head-to-head for a chance to win $100 and prove their jazz knowledge. Watch along and see if you know the answers. Want to prove you're a true jazzologist by appearing as a contestant on the show? Use the link in the description of any episode to sign up. New episodes air every other Friday on Savage Content's YouTube channel, youtube.com/savagecontent. And all past episodes are available under the Live tab. Thanks to Jazzology for sponsoring today's episode. And now, back to the show. Urban Cowboy is the result of a couple of things coming together. We'll start with Mickey Gilley, or Gilley. I'm probably going to go back and forth on how I pronounce that. I'm sorry to everybody for however I get that wrong or right. Gilley was a country music performer born in 1936. He started his career after seeing the success his cousin, Jerry Lee Lewis, had in the early rock and roll scene. Throughout the 60s, Mickey worked hard, but saw only limited success on the charts. In 1971, he partnered with Sherwood Cryer, a Houston-based entrepreneur, to open a nightclub catering to the honky-tonk crowd called Gilley's. Gilley's was located in Pasadena, Texas, not the one in California, and was part of the Houston metro area. It was successful and quickly became world famous for several things. One was the size. Playing along with the idea that everything is bigger in Texas, they had a 6,000 person capacity and was at one time recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest nightclub on the planet. It was also famous for its mechanical bull. The mechanical bulls had been created as a safer way to train for rodeos, but Gilley's was one of the first to bring this into a bar setting as entertainment. It was one of many electronic novelties that were in the club, such as a test of strength, punching bags, and more. Like the bull, the test of strength, these tended to cater to the third element Gilley's would be known for, the as yet unnamed culture that it was catering to / creating. This culture was heavily influenced by country music, by farming and ranching cultures, by ideas of masculinity, and what that all meant to people now living and working in a city. As Gilley's, the club, got started, Gilley's, the man, music career began to take off with multiple country chart toppers and one song that hit the number 50 on the mainstream charts. Gilley himself and the biggest names in country music played there, and it was a place to be seen in Houston. This led to an article written by Aaron Latham, profiling the club and some of its patrons, especially young couple Dew Westbrook and Betty Helmer, for Esquire, called The Ballad of the Urban Cowboy, America's Search for True Grit.
Is it really Gilley's over Gilley's? Because I have also been mispronouncing it.
I can't remember how they pronounced it in the movie.
Rob, you're the fan. How do we say it?
I think it's Gilley. I have no idea. I'm going to get that wrong.
I know. That's what I mean. Like, I don't know.
We're in a real GIF or GIF situation here.
Exactly.
I'm definitely not the qualified one. But, you know, this is reminding me of, I just saw Roadhouse. Is this the beginning of Roadhouses, or is this like the peak of it or something?
Well, I mean, obviously, rough roadhouses have been around for a long time. Especially if like you're talking the original Roadhouse, not the remake, which was amusing. Um, uh, that The original one, this is more like the culture it's creating is more like, that upend, like what they want at the end, the club to be at the end of the movie. This is all fueled by Oklahoma, Texas, to a lesser extent, Louisiana. That's all going through a huge oil boom in the 70s and into the 80s. It's going to go bust in the mid to late 80s, causing a lot of problems for people. But until then, people are living high on the hog. This is what causes shows like Dallas to be created in the first place. But, and as, it's pulling all these people into these new metropolitan areas. They are still working rough, hard living jobs, but they're trying to reconcile their traditional roots, and concepts of what it means to be a man and masculine with their newfound setting. And so that's a big part of it. I also mentioned Aaron Latham is the writer of the article. And around the time the article was written, he married Leslie Stahl, who is a longtime 60 Minutes anchor.
Interesting. It's interesting that you put in the not in California portion as well, because when I tell you, I got like 30 or 40 minutes into this movie before I realized that it was Pasadena, Texas, because I was like, oh, he's leaving Texas to go to California. Urban cowboy, like that was what my brain was thinking, like he's going to the city. And then it took me like some time to be like, oh my god, no, like he's still in Texas, because like I was like, why are they being so country in California? Like my brain was not computing, but I had no idea there was a Pasadena, Texas. I had to Google it. Which is basically Houston.
Yeah, well, what broke my brain at first was that it was Pasadena, because I was pretty sure the club was, because I'd heard of the club long before I saw this movie. And so I was like, I thought that had been in Texas. I thought it had been in Houston. So I'd had to look it up, and I was like, okay, there are two Pasadenas. But you would also be surprised that there is a significant, country culture in California. There's a lot of farming and ranching that is done, and a significant urban cowboy, I'm sure was very popular, and that culture spread out there very much as well. So I mean, in a lot of ways, it could have been set out there. It just so happens, because this is also like, essentially a 2-hour ad for the club as well. Yeah. So if the club had been in California, that's where it would have been set. It just so happens the club was in Houston.
Well, there's actually a very relevant current demographic where you can make this perfect analogy to, and I mean, from a music perspective, it's regional Mexican music, but what I'm referring to is, recent or next generation Mexican Americans that are over here that come from rural areas of Mexico and are now doing the urban cowboy thing. But in addition to that, they're in a different country. So it's the same kind of thing. And you see this culture anywhere from, from bars to grocery stores, anywhere if you're at all in that culture at all or near those areas.
Well, I mean, it's, anytime you have that immigrant story, there's always that pressure of, especially when, how do you maintain that identity you had in the previous place, while, try not to lose that, identity in your new home. Irish immigrants, Italian immigrants, lots of people have gone through that, and they've created new, American versions of that culture in many ways because of that experience.
Peso Pluma. Perfect example, but yeah.
One of the other things we need to talk about is John Travolta and his career up to that point. John was born in a New Jersey suburb of New York City. His father was a tire salesman, and his mother was a singer and actress who passed her passion for theater to her 6 children, the youngest of which was John. In 1971, John dropped out of high school at 17. Normally, not the best plan for success, and began pursuing acting full-time. In 1975, he had his first 2 big breaks almost at the same time. One was he landed his first significant role in a movie called Carrie. Carrie would go on to be a massive hit when it was released in 1975, and even though Travolta was just a supporting part, it was a major step. But the other big break, and because of how production works at times, was seen by audiences before Carrie hit theaters, he landed one of the leading roles in a new TV series called Welcome Back, Kotter. Welcome Back, Kotter was about a teacher, played by Gabe Kaplan, returning to his old high school to teach remedial English to a group called the Sweat Hogs, with the official leader, Vinnie Barbarino, played by Travolta. Welcome Back, Kotter was a hit, and John Travolta the breakout star. While Carrie was a nice stepping stone on a slow, steady path that could possibly lead to stardom and leading roles, Welcome Back, Kotter strapped a rocket to his back. In 1976, in addition to the release of Carrie and the success of Welcome Back, Kotter, he also starred in a TV movie called The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, which was a big cultural hit at the time. This all led to John starring in a film called Saturday Night Fever in 1977. The film was not only a huge hit, but it also earned him his first Oscar nomination, and we'll talk more about the film later. He followed it up with Grease in 1978, which was an even bigger hit. Later in 1978, he also starred in a film called Moment by Moment that flopped with critics and at the box office. By summer of 1979, Travolta's career was at a crossroads. He had starred in 2 massive hits, but his latest film had bombed, and his TV show had seen its ratings decline after its first 2 seasons to the point it got canceled, with its last episode airing in May. It felt really important that his next film was a hit, or else his career might just be over before it started.
There was a time in my life, my childhood life, where all I wanted to be was a sweat hog. I just want to put that out there. It was a very influential show.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's one of those shows I've heard a ton about. It was never in reruns or anything when I was growing up. I'm sure, I could find episodes now, but, I always heard what a huge deal it was. And so in some ways I was a little surprised how brightly it burned and quickly it faded.
Yeah, it's good for those who kids who want to be bad boys, but not really bad, just playing around bad, kind of taught you it was, but man, what a career. I mean, and what a start.
Yeah, John Travolta, he had amazing start, really, because it doesn't always happen for a lot of actors. It can take some time for them to take off, but yeah, I mean, we talked about Grease in our last episode, just about its impact, and it's a huge touch point for a lot of people. But also Carrie, for coming from the horror side, Carrie is like a classic. It's a great one, and I mean, Sissy Spacek in that is awesome. But also John Travolta, he's a small one. He's a small role in that, but still good.
Yeah, well, and Carrie, launched the career of director Brian De Palma. It launched Sissy Spacek's career. It was a huge hit. It also really helped. The success of the book had really launched Stephen King's career, but he really solidified in the pop culture landscape to stay with the movie. Also, Grease. Saturday Night Fever was like grossed like 85 million at the box office, which by today's numbers doesn't sound that great. Was a ton more than its budget, and by 1977 numbers, I don't have my inflation calculator open in front of me. It is a lot more. But Grease was like 178 million or something like that at the box office, which that's made it one of the biggest movies of all time at that point. It is hard to overstate just what a big movie Grease was at the time. And so he then follows it up, like I said, with this romantic drama with him and Lily Tomlin, where called Moment by Moment, where he's this younger guy who gets into this, weird, this romantic relationship with this older woman, played by Tomlin. And the ups and downs of that relationship. I've never seen it, but just reading the description, I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure why people thought this would work in the first place.
As you describe it, I definitely don't want to see it.
But that's where Travolta's career is. As we're coming into how he gets attached to Urban Cowboy, that he's had a lot of success, but it also still feels like, especially in some ways because it was there so quickly, feels like it could go away just as quickly. So Travolta had accepted a lead role in American Gigolo, which listeners of previous episodes will remember was written and directed by Paul Schrader from our Light of Day episode. However, with the failure of Moment by Moment, Travolta became concerned that there was a little too much similarity in plot between American Gigolo and asked out of the picture. Now, keep in mind, like American Gigolo, like the woman is older, but not the same gap between Travolta and Tomlin and Moment by Moment. And, American Gigolo has the sex worker aspect going on and a lot of other things that, so, I could see why he would see there's some similarity, but, also two completely different movies. Paramount, the studio behind it, said, fine, but you now owe us 2 films instead of 1. It's here that we'll take a minute to talk about Saturday Night Fever. Film I'm sure we will cover in depth one day. But for today, we do need to talk about what it was and how it came about. Saturday Night Fever was an examination of the young working-class men, mostly Italian, in the New York boroughs who lived for the weekends where they would spend their time at the latest type of nightclub, discos. It was a look at a subculture deeply tied to location, ethnicity, and masculinity. It was based on an article written for The New Yorker called The Tribal Rights of the New Saturday Night by Nick Cohn. The film was a massive success and a big part of the spread of the popularity of disco and disco culture. In hindsight, it's hard to tell if it spoke to people because that was their experience they were seeing on screen, or if people after emulated the movie because they liked it. And this is the reason it's hard to tell is it turns out in the 90s, Cohn, the author of the original article, admitted he fabricated almost all of it, including making up the main character of the piece. So, he wasn't actually documenting what he was seeing. And so then it becomes a question of whether, the culture we saw after the film was he just happened to, they happened to get it right for the article and the film, even though he thought he was making it up, or it then spread after the fact because of the film. Regardless, a formula had been established of sorts. Take a nightlife subculture that seems on the verge of exploding into the mainstream after a long-form article on it. Adapt the article into a film starring John Travolta. This is where Robert Evans enters the story.
Yeah, it's funny when you lay out the Saturday Night Fever like that, because it literally is just Urban Cowboy but make it disco.
Yeah,
that's so interesting. Also, the fact of making stuff up for an article that inspires a movie, that's interesting too. I don't really know because I haven't seen the movie, so I can't really say, but I've seen the cover and it looks like disco to me.
Yeah, well, I had not seen the movie until I watched Urban Cowboy. I'd seen clips. I remember when I was in film school, we watched the opening, where Travolta is walking down the street to staying alive, and talking about, what a character moment it is. And so I watched, after I watched Urban Cowboy, I kind of got the feeling, based on what I did know about Saturday Night Fever and the plot, that I really kind of needed to go watch it to compare it with Urban Cowboy, and I was kind of correct. And then I kind of looked into, how that was made, and was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to see some things here. And both films are very well made. That they have very talented directors behind both films. And just talented people. And like I said, I'm sure at some point we'll talk, more about it. But you definitely see a lot of the similarities. That basically, Kristen, to your point, Urban Cowboy was like, okay, we'll take Saturday Night Fever and make it country. But
it's a pretty big cultural distinction, and I think that like Saturday Night Fever, I remember just being as a kid and the impact it had. I was probably 8 when that came out. That the city life and music and the energy of all that, and it didn't really hit me. I had seen Saturday Night Fever many times as a TV version as a kid. But it was always wrapped up in the whole phenomenon of it because of the music. And I didn't really realize until later on that it was probably more about the music, because when I finally saw like the unrated versions, like the real version of it, I was a bit shocked at how, like, I guess violent it was. I didn't expect it, if you want to call it that. Like, there were some characters that I remembered being better than they actually were when I saw it when I was older. It's like, oh no, this guy is not that cool after all.
Yeah, and that might be that also leads into a bit of how some of my feelings that will come later in the plot regarding this movie is I wonder, Rob, if some of those characters you may have thought are cool in Urban Cowboy maybe didn't age as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah. We'll definitely. I think we'll get there, because I think there's not only similarities, like the way Adam just broke it down, like the analytically between the two, but there are some just bigger social things that were, kind of the time, when these movies came out compared to now. We'll get there for sure.
Yeah, that, and it's also always interesting, I think it's sometimes easier to forgive films when you see them closer to their original era, that you already have the, passes built into your mind,
Right.
Whereas even if, you grew up in that era or are familiar with that era, sometimes you can't get over some of those humps when you're seeing it retroactively, so. All right. Well, speaking of people who are of their era, Robert Evans was a legendary producer and head of production at Paramount, who took the studio from ninth place to the top studio with projects like The Godfather, Chinatown, and True Grit. In 1979, he was tired of heading the studio and stepped aside with a choice deal to work as an independent producer, with Paramount distributing the resulting films. Music industry veteran Irving Azoff had scooped up the rights to the ballad of the Urban Cowboy, America's Search for True Grit, and partnered with Evans to produce the film. Evans installed James Bridges to direct. Bridges was an established filmmaker with such big films as The Paper Chase and The China Syndrome. Bridges worked with the writer of the original article, Aaron Latham, to craft the script. This is a bit of an oversimplification, as there were some other directors attached or rumors to have been attached, which relates to alternate casting possibilities you sometimes see out there. But for today, that will do. After dropping out of American Gigolo, Paramount presented Travolta with Urban Cowboy. And with concerns over his career looming, he saw comfort as it fit the formula that had worked with Saturday Night Fever. And he saw a challenge. He saw challenges, as it would require him to use an accent and learn how to ride a mechanical bull. Once on board, Travolta threw himself fully into preparation for the role. He would drive around listening to a tape with the accent he would need to use for the film to burn it into his head and to make it as natural as possible. He wanted to, and ultimately would, do all his own mechanical bull riding in the film. To build the necessary skills, he had a mechanical bull installed at his home in L.A.
Gotta respect the commitment.
Yeah.
Installing in your home, man. Well, I mean, he had the money for it he had that Grease money, so
yeah,
he was able to do it.
Well, Grease and, Welcome Back, Kotter and some of that other stuff. And, it might have even been, he might not have even had to necessarily pay for it himself. The production might have paid for it. It might have come out of the final budget for the film. But, he definitely was dedicated. I know, especially as the 80s wore on, it was easy to not necessarily always see him as a true actor, a real performer. But, he definitely, I mean, like even in this part, he definitely showed a lot of talent and dedication to the part. What do you guys know of Robert Evans, the producer?
I mean,
not too much.
Nothing. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't really know too much when it comes to producers of things. You're lucky if I know directors.
Like I said, he's a bit of a legendary guy, quite the character. He'd started off as an actor before transitioning into producing and, like I said, running Paramount Pictures. He's the guy who got The Godfather made, amongst some of these other things. He's also, like, if you think of that era and guys in that time, like one of the things you'll see in his Wikipedia is about a bust for is a very large bust for cocaine. He is also just recently in the headline, Sharon Stone accused him. One of the later movies he produced in his career was a 90s sex thriller called Sliver, with Sharon Stone and Billy Baldwin. And Sharon Stone in her recent autobiography she just put out accused Evans of pressuring her to sleep with Baldwin in real life to up their chemistry together.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so
believe it or not surprising, man. All of these Hollywood people, they're crazy.
Well, the way they marketed that film all had to do with her crossing her legs and a little crotch shot. Do you remember that?
No, that was Basic Instinct. That was
that's right.
This was Billy Baldwin turns out like he's a peeper in this apartment complex, like with all these like hidden cameras, and they, it's all weird. It was on cable a lot when I was a growing lad, so I did see bits and pieces of it, but I don't remember a lot of the plot.
It's funny when you were just explaining about Robert Evans and then you mentioned The Godfather. What's really crazy is that we're now in an era, like I don't even know how, when you say The Godfather, how that hits Kristen. Because as an example, I was over at a friend's house, so it was like a year or two ago, and he's a producer. This artist came in. He's kind of a well-known artist, and The Godfather was on. And he's really into it. We're watching it because it's a classic film. And then after like 10, 15 minutes of watching it, he was amazed. He's like, whoa, what is this? And it just like hit me so hard. Like, wow, we're now at a place where like something like The Godfather is just not ingrained in you anymore, Yeah,
to a degree. I know there was that great joke in Barbie about guys explaining The Godfather to women.
Hilarious. I miss Barbie. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and talking about James Bridges, I just it had actually been on my list to watch. It had been in my iTunes library for some time before we watched Urban Cowboy. But on just last week on one of my flights, I watched The China Syndrome, and that was so good. Yeah. That is such a good movie. So James Bridges, definitely a talented director. So, project is looking very promising. With Travolta in place, it was time to find the female lead. At one point, Sissy Spacek had the part, which would have been a reunion between the two Carrie co-stars. However, not long before filming, unspecified friction began to develop between the two stars, and which led to Spacek exiting the project. Bridges ultimately selected Debra Wringer for the role. Urban Cowboy would mark Winger's first major role, but there was one problem. Surprisingly, the concern wasn't Winger's lack of star power to hold the lead role. Instead, Evans felt she wasn't attractive enough for the part. Eventually, Bridges and Travolta called Evans from the set and told him that if Wringer didn't have the role, then Evans no longer had a director or star. Evans relented and Wringer got the part. Cameras started rolling on July 2nd, 1979, and continued until November 6th, 1979. Originally, the shoot had been scheduled to start in June, but was delayed when Travolta suffered a dog bite on his lip. This was one of several minor delays that the production encountered that added to the cost of the film. Filming mostly took place in and around the Houston area, with all of Gilley's interior scenes being filmed inside the club itself during after hours and using club regulars as extras. Towards the end of filming, they shifted to East LA. But after an incident in which suspected gang members crossed into their restricted area and fired guns in the air, the production moved the final days into a secure soundstage elsewhere in LA. The final budget was reportedly $13 million, $2 million more than originally intended. With filming complete, they began planning their premiere for June 5th, 1980, in Houston at Gilley's. It was planned to be an event, not just for the entertainment industry, but the high society of Houston.
That $2 million just went to the mechanical bull in John Travolta's home. That was where the money went.
Well, I think some of it was Debra. Someone, I think it was Debra, at one point like broke a wrist or something, and so that slowed production. Like they had to miss like a couple weeks of shooting. But I mean, it was like all like little stuff like that happens on a big production, where, stuff you can't account for. I could never find anything that said what exactly the stressors between Spacek and Travolta were, especially as, they clearly didn't seem to have any issues on Carrie, but, whether it was, Travolta's ego had grown or, what it was, it didn't work out. But I also, getting back to, what a, specific 70s type of POS Robert Evans was, insisting that Debra Wringer is not attractive enough was kind of funny.
It's just, I can't picture Sissy Spacek in this role. Like, I can't. Yeah. Like, maybe if Sissy, like, the character was more, like, maybe it's just because I haven't seen enough, but, like, the way that the physicality of Sissy Spacek, it would just be interesting to see her in this kind of role where she is, like, very, like, not aggressive, but very much like, I'm going to do what I want to do. It would have been very interesting to see her in this kind of role. But I think Debra Wringer did a good job doing this type of role. I think that she fits well, despite some stupid man's opinion about her attractiveness, as if she's in Hollywood, so clearly attractive enough to get some roles. So, it's just silly.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure he did not use the phrase "not attractive enough." I'm sure he used, because this is the 70s and this is Robert Evans, I'm sure he used something far more vulgar.
Right.
Now, Rob, what are your thoughts about them trying to shoot in East LA and getting scared off because of gunfire?
Well, no, I think it's funny. I mean, it's a hilarious kind of trivia behind this all, and it's not the first time we've heard of this stuff happening. And actually, I'm hearing this so many times. I don't understand why it's even an option anymore. Like why filming and doing things in East LA and other areas were still considered, other than the fact that yes, they save a lot of money, but then they end up spending more because they have to shoot somewhere else or they have to pay for a hospital bill or whatever it may be. It's crazy.
Also reminded me of in The Warriors, where they had to watch out for gangs within the place that they were filming a couple times. It's just
you
for the authenticity, you have to accept that there's going to be real life people just trying to exist in these areas.
Yeah, well, for the Warriors that makes sense. Like they were filming in and around New York, where the movie was taking place. I don't understand what they were filming in East LA that apparently, because they were able to successfully move it to, a soundstage anyway. So I don't know what required, them being in actual East LA to sub for Houston. You know,
not sure.
So
we'll never know.
But just like you said, that was a fun little bit of trivia, and it was one that I encountered kind of multiple places. So with that, let's take our tickets. Let's head to Gilley's for the big world premiere. Kristen, take us through the plot.
All right, so the film begins with our protagonist, Buford Bud Davis. He's leaving his family home in Spur, Texas, and moving to Pasadena, Texas, for a oil refinery job where his uncle Bob Davis, he works. As he drives into the Pasadena-Houston area, the song Texas by Charlie Daniels plays. We learn that Bud wants to earn enough money to buy land back in Spur. So that's the setup of this movie, kind of just the opening scene. We kind of see him driving along on his way there. So what are your guys' initial thoughts with this opening?
I know what I when we jump in, I just want to say I think it was a great kind of it set the tone of like seeing like the oil. Don't you see oil fields, but then you see highway, you see this mixture of oil and city. You're starting to make these connections of what's happening with the commerce there and why it's hustling and bustling. And you kind of get this little bit of foreshadowing of a little bit of a culture clash, maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting because I felt like the song and the title, like just seeing him kind of driving, he's opening up a beer while he's driving. He's got the cowboy hat, like he's just immediately you understand the vibe. You know exactly what kind of film you're getting into without even if you went in completely blind, you see John Travolta with his little cowboy hat, he's opening up a beer while driving, he's listening to some country music, like you immediately get like, okay, this is what we're going for, this is the vibe. And I think that it was like this opening scene was set really well.
Well, he didn't actually open up a beer. He took the empty beer bottle after he put his dip in and started lipping into it. Yeah. Because
still that's really gross. That definitely still sets the scene. I hate dip. That stuff's gross.
Still, there was no hesitation in using a beer can for that in your car.
Yeah,
right.
Old beer bottle, but it was more just like I was shocked. Like, wait, is he actually going? Like, because that I'm pretty sure that wasn't movie magic. I'm pretty sure that was real dip he put in there. That's where I was like, oh, he's actually going for it. And doing it.
It looked authentic. Cowboy. I think all of it started to look very authentic as far as like setting the stage up.
Oh yeah. No, that I thought it was a very well done, opening, and it really conveyed what it wanted to, which is, Bud is, a country bumpkin, but he's tired of the country life and ready to go for some big city action. In Houston with his uncle and his uncle's family.
The other thing I think that you get, and this permeates as you continue to watch the movie, but already this quickly, I think you start to get this vibe that, he's a young man, and with that comes, immaturity as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just leave it at that. Like you just get these little tones, like he's a young guy, and so.
I also did like Travolta with the beard. One of the things I also came across was apparently he had originally wanted to keep the thing the whole time, which Bridges was kind of against, that it, really didn't work with the character development and stuff. And Travolta, he basically kind of convinced, in his own way, convinced Travolta not to go ahead and shave it as planned, because like they set somewhere for lunch, and he got almost no people asking him for autographs.
Yeah, you make a really good point, because I did not recognize him at first.
Yeah.
Like in the opening scene, at very first, I was like, "Is that John Travolta?" And I like had to kind of like left and right kind of move my head, and I was like, "Okay, that is him." Because he's not known for having the beard, so it definitely was good camouflage.
Not till decades later when he's bald on top, but has the beard.
Yes.
Well, or at least admits to being bald on top, because at least according to rumors, he was bald for a very long time before he finally showed the world.
One of the next characters that gets established is Bob Davis, who is played by Barry Corbin. This is the uncle, okay? And he immediately, he fits the description quite well. You get immediately that vibe that, like, this guy is, if he was your uncle, he's taking care of you. Like, he's showing you the town. He's going to make sure you're rooted well. He ends up setting him up with John Travolta's character up with a job. Barry Corbin is best known for his starring role as Maurice Minifield on the TV series Northern Exposure, of which he won 2 Primetime Emmy Award nominations. He's also known for the TV series, this is going back, Dallas, Lonesome Dove, One Tree Hill, The Closer, The Ranch, and Yellowstone. And also a few films like Stir Crazy, War Games, and a great movie, No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, he was also in a great one of the later TV movies of Columbo, one where with Peter Falk's wife at the time was in it. She played Barry's wife, who was trying to get him framed for murder.
Nice.
Yeah, you brought up a good explanation of who Uncle Bob is, because that next part in this plot here is basically just kind of getting a bigger introduction into Uncle Bob and his family, and then we kind of get this chance to see Bud start to embrace the local nightlife, which includes Gilley's, the popular Pasadena bar and nightclub, the biggest honky-tonk in the world, according to Bob. So as Bud is being shown around, there's a band playing a song about honky-tonk wine. They're setting the vibe. And then Mickey Gilley, the actual guy, plays a heartfelt rendition of Here Comes the Hurt Again. And this is one of many times that we'll actually get Mickey Gilley to actually play some songs within this movie. But this is one of the first. And so we've got this set up, and Bud is having his wild night out with 2 local women. He returns to his uncle's house hungover, and then we kind of get to see a moment of him getting the interview at the plant, where this is where he's told, okay, you're hired, but you have to shave your beard. And so then we're kind of cut to another night at this club, because as we have discussed a bit in the production notes, that Gilley's is a big facet of this movie. So it pretty much takes place primarily at this place. And so Bud is beard free. He meets a fellow nightclub patron, Sissy, and the song Love in Vain by the Rolling Stone plays. And that's kind of the song that plays when they meet. And then as they're dancing together, we hear Cherokee Fiddle by Johnny Lee. Now, it may seem strange that I keep bringing up these songs. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, no, I think that this is part of what you're getting to, not just with the music, but I got just take a step back for a second and say, when you first get to Gilley's or Gilley's,
Gilley's, whatever.
Right. You immediately get hit you're in that world. From the music, the chaos of people just everywhere, from dancing to fighting to playing games. It's a madhouse. Cowboy boots and cowboy hats everywhere. It's chaos. And you get you're immediately in this whole other world. And I think culturally, especially at that time, early 80s, and to expose all this to the whole country, it brought you right into this world. It was very effective.
Yeah, because I mean, you may have noticed already, I brought up like 4 songs already because there is just tons and tons of songs in this, which is the intention because we kind of talked about, or maybe we haven't yet, but I think a big part of this film is to kind of bring country back into the zeitgeist to make it popular again. And it's like all these songs are there with intention. They may not be big hits, but they will be, or they could be. They're kind of put in there with intention, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. And, it's also like you're seeing that, it's like a lot of times you think of like, okay, this is, like you would think maybe this is a place you only go on the weekend, but they kind of clearly show that this is a place a lot of people go to every night, and, one of the things I immediately thought of when watching it was especially, with how often these people are going, not, just every Saturday, but, more frequently than that. $5 cover in 1980s money is over $18, so nearly $20 cover today, just to get in the door every time you go.
Oh my gosh. Oh, half his paycheck went to Gilley's, man. Half of it went there.
I'm also thinking that's where, like if you adjusted his paycheck for inflation, he's probably making a lot more and being considered working class than, we would like, to admit for a lot of us today.
You kind of get the feeling that it's do this or stay home in that area.
Yeah. I mentioned a surprise trivia fact in the just as we were getting ready to record. One of the 2 women, and it's kind of especially ironic, Kristen, that you mentioned the Rolling Stones, because I'm pretty sure one of the 2 women that John Travolta goes home with there is played by Jerry Hall. Rob, do you know Jerry Hall?
Yes. I thought, okay, that's why she looked familiar.
Yeah, so Jerry Hall, one of her most famous movie roles is she plays Jack Palance, and then later kind of Jack Nicholson's girlfriend in the Batman 1989, the Tim Burton one. But she is probably most famous for being married to Mick Jagger for many years. Why did I suddenly blank on his name?
Oh, good.
Yeah. It was like, but she had a number of children with Mick Jagger. She's a British fashion model and actress, and so or American fashion model and actress, and so that was kind of a fun little connection, and then especially connection to see that she was already close to the Rolling Stones in a way, even before she was close to the Rolling Stones. So,
very cool.
And it's a moment where you say, "Man, he's got a cool uncle." Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that the family he's with are very supportive and all of that. I did enjoy how they were so close to him.
Well, it was also an interesting contrast where, again, like you're seeing the difference between like the conservative home life and, what city life is like, where, it wouldn't be acceptable to go out all night and do these things, but, that is considered just as, just fine. And then you lie to the folks back home about it necessarily, like, oh no, I'm being a good, he's being a good church going boy, but it's not, that it's kind of showing that, it's not just, like the big city seduces, young naive bud, that this is how everybody is acting in the city, and he is being indoctrinated into this, by his uncle.
Yeah. Definitely. And we've been talking about different songs, and there's a big song that also comes up in this portion of the film because we kind of get to see Bud and Sissy get to know each other a little bit better. You kind of see that they're starting to fall in love a little bit. They kiss on the dance floor, and the song that's playing is Looking for Love by Johnny Lee. This is the first time the song is played, but it will not be the last. And then in this section of the movie, we also hear a bit of Don't It Make You Want to Dance? and we see the Cowboys playing a punch and bag game, kind of like what Rob was mentioning, lots of stuff going on in all different places. And it's in this kind of chaos of everybody just having a good time. Eventually gets to a point where Sissy and Bud not having as much of a good time. They get into a fight and Bud hits her. And Sissy storms out of the club, refuses to get a ride from Bud, who kind of like comes out and is like, get in my car. And he tries to manhandle her into the car, well, the truck, I should say, which leads her to taking a dip in a big puddle with him. And then from there, Bud is like, do you want to get married? And then it instantly cuts to photos of their wedding day. Newly married couple are dancing to Can I Have This Dance? And the couple moves into a brand new mobile home. So yeah, a lot happens. It gets right to the point. Like it's like they meet, you get a little bit of interaction with them, and then boom, they're married.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like How I Married My Wife. Isn't this how it goes? This is like the most romantic setup.
Yeah, you know, maybe for me, I was like, girl, what are you doing? Like, you need to run. Like, and especially and that's coming from a modern lens, you know, like I know a lot of people, they will just get married like that, drop of the hat. And especially in this type of environment, like this type of culture, I totally get that it's like a cultural thing. But for me, I was like, I cannot believe, like, already, like, you barely know this man. He just slapped you. Like, what are you doing? But
I would imagine everybody thought this, like, wow, that was quick. I mean,
yeah,
Adam,
that it was definitely quick. I was also like even if it's as a gift, like they can afford, you know, like a brand new mobile home, you know, and all this brand new stuff. Like, and he's just got like the, you know, most entry level jobs. Like, you know.
It's not like today. You can actually afford to buy homes back in the 70s.
I think
it's not
think
like
what that
2024.
is, I think that's the rite of passage where you start out that way and then you move on up. Like, it's not supposed to be like, okay, this is where you're at, trailer home. I believe this is like, you know, you got your job, you're being established, you're getting married very quickly. So here, like, you have to do it this way, trailer, and there's a route here. But now I hear your point.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like today, like, you know, let's say there was an uncle and a nephew working that same job. I don't think the uncle or the rest of the family would be able to help them even buy a trailer as a wedding gift, you know, especially a brand new one these days. So, you know, again, it's just getting back to, you know, how the economics of some of this stuff have changed. But yeah, no, Kristen, to your point, you know, definitely a lot of, you know, what are you doing? A lot of cringe to the modern eye, you know, but, you know,
let's be clear. Let's be clear about one thing. She called him out, like, you know, you hit me. Like, that was how could you react that way towards me by hitting me? And then that gets glossed over.
Yeah, well, and some of this, like, I wish so. You know, the original article that this is based off of is paywalled off, and for, you know, we, you know, as this is a brand new show, we don't really have the budget to be signing up for all these services, so I can get behind the paywall and do way too much research, more than I already do. But I had wanted to read the original article because I wanted to see what Do and Betty, what their relationship was like and how much of it actually mirrored, you know, Bud and Sissy. You know, but I was not able to do that. So I do not know if the quickie wedding, if the, you know, very combustible personalities were an aspect of Do and Betty's relationship that, you know, inspired the article in the movie, or not.
I think I also want to say, like, while of course it's great that she's like talking back to him and basically is like, yeah, no, you're not going to hit me. It still doesn't, like, even if she wasn't that type of character, that type of woman, never okay to hit a woman. That's just not, you don't hit your partner. That's just not how you do. Like, I love that she's that type of character that stands up for herself in the beginning, at least. But like the fact that just because she's that type of character doesn't necessarily make it, because like you said, Rob, they gloss over it. It's just like a small little line before they cut to something else.
Yeah, because we're going to have to keep dealing with this issue throughout the movie, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah, but I think that for this, I think this particular moment is also signifies that in that era, it was expected sort of like to give the boys a few passes.
Yeah, the bar is in hell.
No, well, and again, talking about like similarities between this and Saturday Night Fever, that there's in Saturday Night Fever, it's not hitting, but it is sexual assault and sexual aggression towards women.
Right.
Is the big thing, and there, like the big, character growth that Travolta's character goes through is learning that he can be just friends with a woman, and kind of
Crazy.
learning. I know. Well, learning, that maybe some of the sexually aggressive indoctrination he'd gone through with his friends, and his neighborhood wasn't the healthiest, and maybe he should get the hell out of there for a bit. And it's like, okay, that's like, especially looking back now, like, not a great story. I did not love going through that journey with you, but at least, Mark, like, bitty progress.
Right.
So, like I said, a lot of similarities between this and Saturday Night Fever. As we'll see as we go on.
We get to we get exposed to obviously many more characters, and one of them is a guy named Marshall. This is Bud's friend. He's played by Cooper Huckabee, and you'll know Cooper Huckabee if you are familiar with number of TV series and films, ER and The Shield on the TV side. On the film side, he has been in Gettysburg, The Funhouse, Space Cowboys. And I have a really wild note here that he also appeared in the Killers video for A Dustland Fairy Tale. I need to check that out again to look for him.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm sorry. One of the biggest things is the recurring TV series. Recurring role in the TV series True Blood.
Yeah, which I was actually like, True Blood's kind of in the news again these days because Anna Paquin and Stephen Moyer, who starred on the show, they actually, met doing the show and got married. They have a couple kids together, but he just directed her in a new movie that's coming out soon. So,
very interesting.
Yeah.
So now kind of getting back into the plot a little bit, we've kind of established the dynamic. We've got the two main characters that are now married, and they go to a prison rodeo together. They are in matching outfits, and there's like this brief comment about prisoners in white being like allowed to watch the bullfight at the same time, like in separate bleachers. Just like a small detail I wanted to mention. But at
hold on,
go ahead.
Sorry, it's not a bullfight.
Listen, man, I'm not into country. This is not my job. This is not my jam. I think that maybe I've been like trying to be like, like neutral, but like literally this ain't my thing. So I'm sorry.
Rodeo. I've been to bullfights, but this is a rodeo.
I grew up with more of it than you did, so bullfight, that's when the bull's actually going to die at the end.
This is why you read my summary.
I know. I caught it the first time. I caught it when I changed it to prison rodeo instead of prison bullfight. I just missed the second one. I apologize.
Oh well, it is what it is. But So basically, they see this rodeo and whatever. And now when they're back at Gilley's, there's now a mechanical bull for people to be able to pay to ride. And Sissy's interested in riding this mechanical bull, but Bud forbids it. Bud is allowed to ride it, of course, because he's a man. But he doesn't think a girl should. So Sissy is just this, like, as we kind of talked about, like in the previous part there, she's very feisty, very independent, hot-tempered, and she's like, well, why shouldn't I be able to ride it? And Bud is this opposite idea of where he believes in a lot of traditional gender roles. He's very old-fashioned, and these opposing views cause lots of fights between them. And so in this section, I also want to mention that we meet one another important main characters, which is Wes Hightower. He is a recently paroled convict and prison rodeo champion who is hired to operate Gilley's mechanical bull. And he is pretty talented on the bull. He's pretty great. And then right after he kind of rides one of the first times, Sissy wants to try to ride right after, but then Bud pulls her away to dance. So another evening, Sissy decides she's going to make plans to go ride the bull in the afternoon so that Bud doesn't know. And she's kind of secretly learning how to ride it because she is insisting that basically she is like, oh, well, he's probably mad because I would probably be just as good as him. And then that same night, a drunken Bud becomes enraged when Wes flirtatiously tips his hat at Sissy, leading to a fight between Bud and Wes, with Wes gaining the upper hand.
Oh yeah, easily. And the thing is it's crazy because this gets foreshadowed when, Kristen just mentioned the rodeo at the penitentiary, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think you missed this, but just in case you did, Kristen, while Sissy and Bud are watching the rodeo, they make a comment on this one cowboy, this one jailed cowboy who is incredible at riding. And I think it was John Travolta's character who kind of made some reference to basically now that's a real cowboy, right? Like that's the real. Yeah. Well, it turns out that is Wes Hightower. He must have gotten out a couple weeks later, right? Oh, and that's why he's there. Yeah, that's him at the bar. That's obviously, so his first intro was actually at the prison rodeo.
Yeah.
Wes. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that's very solid, storytelling, where you're, Chekhov, where, it already did not seem like a wasted scene, like it had its purpose, but now, even more, little details come back into play. That's like when every little detail you drop in Act 1 is used in Act 3, that's however you want to think about it, that's the sign of a really well-written script.
And totally. That also shows that Bud he does respect him as a cowboy, even though later on they become enemies, probably because of that aspect, maybe a little bit, but also the Sissy thing. But it's interesting to see at one point he did see him as a respected kind of guy.
Right, which only pulls to his insecurities later on, right?
Yes.
So anyway, so Wes Hightower is played by Scott Glenn. And Scott Glenn, who I think already has a pretty chiseled face, is pretty chiseled here, right? He's in great shape. He's coming from prison. He's got the prison body. He's flexing when he's doing, when he's doing the mechanical bull riding. He is the antagonist in this film for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how they introduce him because, when you first see him, especially with, some of the negative stuff around Travolta's character, you're wondering, is this actually going to be a better guy that you're going to root for more?
That's what I thought too. I was like, okay, wait, is he a bad guy?
Yeah.
Right. But then you soon discover he is. But his introduction's so vague at first.
Yeah, he's very stoic.
In some ways that's again good screenwriting because you're kind of going through what Sissy's going through. That she's going, oh, here's this mysterious guy. Is he maybe better for me?
And a real cowboy, right? He's a real cowboy.
Yeah. Not just a fake cowboy like the guy who's, hitting on me and trying to control me.
Like the guy who hit me and I married.
Yeah.
And just in case those who don't know who Scott Glenn is, little reminders might be he was in Silence of the Lambs, The Hunt for Red October. He's also been in films like The Bourne Ultimatum, the HBO series The Leftovers, and on Netflix you've seen him in Daredevil and Castle Rock. It's one of those guys, if you don't know his name, when you see him, you just recognize him because he's got that character face.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
He was also...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, one of the things I know him from, again, you talk about a movie that you saw a bunch growing up because it was on TV all the time, was The Right Stuff.
Yeah.
And Scott Glenn was in that. He played Alan Shepard.
I wanted to say, we were talking about how it's unclear if he's a good or bad guy at first, and because of how stoic he is. That's what also kind of made me laugh, is that it took so long for him to actually have a speaking line that I was like, is this guy mute? What? Because all he did was little hat tips a bunch of times, and I was like, who is this man? I'm unclear of how to feel about him yet.
You know what though? You mentioned something that's good too. He an ex-con although people may or may not know that he's showing these displays of like courtesy and manners, and ends up being a cloak. But you see him playing that game to sort of your point of like not being sure where he stands at this moment of the film.
Mm-hmm.
There's another character too that you're introduced to named Steve. Is it Steve Strange or Stranger?
Steve Strange, yeah. No,
Steve Strange, yeah.
That might have been a nod to the Marvel Comics character.
That's what it's funny because I
didn't see that written anywhere, but I mean,
right.
like that name, especially like Doctor Strange as a comic book character was a little more underground in 1980, versus 2024. That name is very well known, but it also could have been they just chose the alliterative name or something.
Well,
so
this character who, funny enough, I didn't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy. That's something else, right? Because he does kind of introduce the bad guy to a lot of situations. Anyways, he's played by James Gammon, and James Gammon is he's the quintessential good old boy type, right? In many films, he's that good old boy, cowboy-like character. You would have seen him, and however, though, I think probably his biggest role that I really kind of know and love him for is from Major League, and Major League 2, but Major League, man. He's awesome in that film. He's also known for being the retired longshoreman Nick Bridges on the CBS TV show Nash Bridges. And actually, curiously enough, he was. And do you remember the film The Iron Giant?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he voiced the animated characters of Marv Loach and Floyd Turbido, I think it was. But yeah, the Iron Giant.
Well, and he was in Cowboy. He was in a ton of stuff. Like his voice is very distinctive. It's that gruff, gravelly voice, which he's also, he was born in 1940. So this was filmed. He was technically younger than I am. Currently, which makes me feel good about how I am aging. But also, like Major League is only 9 years later and he looks ancient. Like even in comparison to a picture of himself, from 1980. And then the real funny thing with Nash Bridges, because again, he's starting to get into that period where, he just looks old and grizzled.
Right.
Even though he's, only in his early 50s, he is playing, they say he's playing the father of Nash Bridges. Guess how many years apart he and Don Johnson are?
I wouldn't. I was about to say I don't even think it's that much. Yeah, I wouldn't have even suspected that much. Hilarious.
Yeah, 9 years apart. So
well, things were different back then, Adam.
Oh yeah. No, I get it. People age differently. But if nothing else, I look at how people aged back then and go, man, I feel better about me.
Well, IRP to James Gammon. He passed away.
No. He was awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that does it for us for part one. We're gonna have to leave things for today. Will Sissy and Bud live happily ever after? How will Wes affect their relationship? Although we've kind of given a little spoilers and hints about that. Will Sissy ride the bull? Tune in to part 2 to find out the answers and so much more. Thanks so much to my co-hosts, Rob and Kristen. Thank you, as always, to our editor, Javi, and the entire Savage Content team. Thanks so much to our sponsor, Jazzology with Willard Jenkins. And most importantly, thanks to you for listening. If you like the show, give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. If you are watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell, all the good YouTube things. I've been your host, Adam, and we'll see you next time.